All right, and with that, welcome everybody to our first in a four-part series about women in global business and why you should think about exporting if you're not already, and to hear inspiring stories of women who already are exporting and to learn all about the services that are available to businesses who are thinking about going global. My name is Susan Gates, and I am the co-founder of the W Marketplace. We like to call ourselves the economic engine for women. You can see our logo up there with the U.S. Commercial Service. This morning, so just a couple of things before we get started with introductions. We're going to leave all of our attendees and our participants on mute. But if you have any questions, please do feel free to drop those into the Q&A. So we'll be monitoring that Q&A as we go. If you're having any technical issues, please drop those into the chat because we will pay attention to those really quickly and make sure that we get you any help that you need. As I mentioned, we are being recorded, so keep that in mind. So the quick agenda is we're going to do some intros from me and then from our commercial service partners, and then we're going to go on and the panelists will introduce themselves, and then we'll be hearing from these amazing 3 women entrepreneurs who are at different parts of their exporting journey. We can hear about what that has been like for them and learn from what they have done. And then we will have the opportunity to take questions through the Q&A. So if you drop those in, we'll be monitoring those, and then our moderator will be able to ask our panelists as we move along. And with that, let's get going. Lisa, if you don't mind getting our slides moving. So as I mentioned, my name is Susan Gates, and I'm the co-founder of the W Marketplace. We are an e-commerce program, or we're an e-commerce website that is for women-owned businesses. Let's see, do I have the ability to move my slides, Lisa, or are you moving them for me? Oh, thank you so much. We're an e-commerce marketplace for consumers who are looking for a place to shop from women entrepreneurs. And we're also a new and supportive platform for women-owned businesses to grow and thrive. So if you are a women-owned business that sells products or professional services, this is a place where it's another sales channel that you can join and sell your products and services to a national audience. This is just a quick screen grab of our homepage. I think this was last week. We've updated it since then. If you pop onto it now, you can see a wonderful mosaic of the headshots of all of the women who are selling on our site, which is really fun. You can see our webpage down there below. And if you want to go ahead and progress. This is just a quick snapshot of what our businesses look like. We're over 500 businesses strong now, with offering close to 4,000 products and professional services, and that is growing daily. This is a breakdown of the businesses who have chosen to join our site and who have chosen to identify the communities that they want to be part of and to be recognized with. So this is just to give you an idea that we are very representative of what women-owned businesses across the United States look like. We can progress. And then the question is, why are we working with the U.S. Commercial Service? And for me, this is the best question because it absolutely is in our mission. Our mission is to help women-owned businesses grow and thrive. And part of that journey can be through exporting. So we want to make the information available to both our sellers about the services that are available through the U.S. Commercial Service and their partners to help you grow and thrive and learn to be an expert at exporting, and also to provide a platform, an e-commerce platform that can be part of that journey. If you're just getting started, the W Marketplace is a great place to start looking at that. So it's absolutely our mission to give women-owned businesses a place to grow and to have that vision, even if you're not ready to export, but to have that vision for what your growth can look like. And Lisa, if you want to progress. And then again, this is just a restatement of our mission that I mentioned earlier. So we are wanting to close the economic gender gap by empowering women entrepreneurs to grow and thrive while providing a destination for consumers to shop their values. It's a fun week for us with International Women's Day this week. So we have a sale going on. And with that, one more slide, and then I will turn it over to Lisa. So our invitation to everyone on this call this morning is, number one, learn about exporting, because we absolutely think this is a fantastic way to think about growing your business. It's also to shop and support women entrepreneurs like yourselves, and then to join as a seller if you're thinking about another sales channel. You can see some of these are all our women sellers, which is really fun. And you will actually be seeing one of them on the call later today. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Lisa.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction, Susan. So hi, everybody. I'm Lisa White, and I am a commercial officer at the U.S. Commercial Service Seattle office, which provides services across the state of Washington. So the U.S. Commercial Service is the International Trade Administration's export arm, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are thrilled to be co-hosting this event with the W Marketplace. As you just heard from Susan's presentation, our missions are really aligned, and we're proud to be working together not just on this series, but also beyond to support women who are in and who aspire to be in global business. So why are we all here today? Research shows that businesses who export and employ what they are in business longer, they employ more staff, they withstand fluctuating sales cycles more successfully, and they stay in business longer. So the world is absolutely full of potential customers, and we would like to help you reach them. So our mission is to grow U.S. exports, which in turn also increases U.S. jobs. Our federal agency is truly global. Not only do we have over 100 offices across the United States, we also work in more than 70 countries with staff based out of U.S. embassies and consulates all around the world. So we support export businesses, and we need to be action-oriented to help these businesses make international deals. So we accomplish this through offering a variety of services. We offer one-on-one export counseling. We can actually help businesses identify the next international market opportunity for their products and services. We also have access to powerful market research databases and employ people all over the world who can help your business with the newest market intelligence, which will help you to determine which markets to pursue. So we also offer business matchmaking. We can set businesses up with one-on-one meetings with potential buyers and distributors. And in certain circumstances, through commercial diplomacy, we can leverage our authority as the US government to advocate for business interests to help you overcome an international trade barrier. This is our contact slide for Washington State. So as you'll see here, each of us supports a different industry sector. And the first step to finding out to see if we have a service that's the right fit for your business is to reach out to us. We'd love to discuss this with you one-on-one. And so I will be sending this deck out after the presentation, along with the contact portal for offices who are nationwide, since I know we have businesses who are joining us not just from Washington State, but all around the country today. And we'll make sure that you know how to contact the U.S. Export Assistance Center closest to you. So up next, I would like to turn it over to the U.S. Commercial Service Seattle Office Director, Diane Mooney, who will be moderating our panel today. So over to you, Diane.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. And I am thrilled to be here. And per that last slide, I get to lead an awesome group of people that work with U.S. companies every day to help them export their products, services, and technologies. We get to partner with amazing people like Susan and everybody at the W Marketplace. And in turn, we get to meet and work with a wide array of exporters from across the country, including our very wonderful exporters and women-owned businesses here today. So I would like to start off our panel today by asking each of our three panelists to introduce themselves and tell a little bit about who you are and what you do. And we'll just sort of go in order of the slides here with Holly and Akilah and Christy. And I'd invite you to turn on your cameras and we will get started with the moderated portions, the questions and the answers. Thank you so much for starting. We'll start with you, Holly.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I sell with the W Market and I've been working with the US Commercial Service. So both are super great companies to get in contact with. So I'm Holly Eve and I own Madame Lemmy. It's a luxury sustainable body care company. I sell through my e-commerce channel, Amazon. I'm with Macy's, the Four Seasons. It's grown a lot. We've been featured on the Today Show and a lot of publications. And I'm also a public speaker. I'm a USC guest lecturer, and I'm a contributor for Forbes and Founder, and I write about entrepreneurship and mental health and for Forbes Women. So specifically cover entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to you, Akilah.
Hi, everybody. My name's Akilah Jackson, and I am the founder, owner, creative director, charismatic visionary of Sons of Intentional Living. It's interesting how my brand came to be. I actually started my brand in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I saw someone joined in from there. So, hi, Lafayette. A lot of what inspired me to start this brand of handmade goods, as well as ethically sourced, fair trade goods and apparel now, is just trying to find some peace and, looking for things that remind me of the multicultural world that I see. And it's really hard to find a lot of these aesthetics in mainstream department stores, online. And it's like, you end up having to look beyond the surface for a lot of this stuff. And sometimes you don't know where to go. Through my journey, I started with one line of products, my intention candles, having Louisiana roots, right? And that has now since grown, as well as the company. I now am located in Las Vegas. People thought I was crazy for relocating here in the middle of a pandemic and taking orders and all that, but somehow we just made it all work. You just gotta just roll with it. And, anyone that knows that true American spirit knows exactly what I'm talking about. So we've grown into so many other items. A lot of them are made by myself or my mom. I'm also a seller on the W Marketplace. And I mean, this journey, this experience and getting into export has really given me the confidence I need to inspire others and to let them know that, some of our biggest hurdles in life is really within ourselves, right? We think it's something outside, but it's really something within. Once you kind of like kill that inner critic and just start rolling with the punches, things just start happening. It's magic. So I tell people like, yeah, we can focus on the individual items that are created or that I sourced, or we can just really focus on the vibes. So like really, if you think about it, Sons of Intentional Living is a lifestyle brand that just sells like good vibes.
Very nice. Very good. And we'll hear more from certainly Holly and Akilah. And I'll turn it over now for Christy to introduce herself and her company. Christy.
Hi, my name is Christy Smith, and I'm really excited to be here today. Thanks for having me. We manufacture children's compression medical devices for kids that have sensory and motor delay. So kids that have autism, sensory processing disorder, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, that type of thing. It provides a core bracing and supportive system for them to help move and walk and reach and grab and crawl and all those things that happen in daily life. So that's what we do. We started in 1996. And in 2006, I joined the company and took it from a local business just in Washington State to a national business. By 2014, I decided to take it internationally. So now we're global. We're in 23 different countries and have distributors in each of those countries that we use for our sales and marketing. So that's a little bit about our company, and I look forward to talking to you more about it as we go. Thanks.
Great. Well, I'm going to have questions for all of you, and I'll ask a variety of questions to each of you. And as our audience can ascertain here, we have companies at every stage of the export journey. And so hopefully that will inspire you no matter where you are and help you with your mission to grow and thrive. So let's start it off. Holly, I'm going to ask you to tell me about your first international sale, if you remember it.
I do. It was a company, I think, called Number 11 Spa in the Cayman Islands. And they reached out to me right when I launched. And it was a small order, but it was the first order outside of the US. And there was a lot that I learned from that as far as shipping. And it's just amazing how much it's grown since then.
Thank you. Akilah, do you remember your first international sale?
Yeah, I have an omni-channel network of people just like feeling the vibes, right? So I sell direct to consumer, mostly online, but as well as wholesale. So believe it or not, my first international sale was through a drop shipper who's connected to my site, because I use Shopify, in case anyone's wondering. And it was going to Bahrain. And all I could think to myself is, where is that? What do I do? How am I supposed to package this? I really think a lot of, the fear that we have inside is not just only our own lack of confidence, but also if you're not using the right platform, it just so happens that Shopify was a little easier to kind of ease into it, and using the harmonized system and things like that. And even though I still have a lot to learn about packaging in the different countries that are a little bit more protectionist, you know what I mean? But eventually the customer received the order like a month later. So a lot of lessons learned, but we had some great conversation, and they were even giving me advice, believe it or not, on what I should do next time in case they order. So Bahrain was my first international sale, and hi, Bahrain. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. And you underscore a really important point, Akilah, which is just the requirements of, especially like packing in any particular country. You might run across some challenges there. And I think, as Lisa mentioned, we do have offices everywhere, and we want to make sure that everybody can contact us here. There is no wrong door. We can get you to the right place by contacting really any one of us. And so, we can help you overcome those kinds of hurdles, like even packaging in Canada, having a French language requirement. There's something challenging any place we go almost. Let's see, Christy, I'm going to jump over to you, and can you share with us if you intentionally created an export strategy when you started in exporting in 2014? Do you have one now, and how has that changed over the years?
Yeah, I spent about 1.5 years creating our international strategy. When we decided to launch in 2014, we were launching at a specific place in Germany at Dusseldorf at the Medica trade fair, and that was going to be the beginning of our international strategy. So the 1.5 years before that, I created the international strategic plan, and we really had to do a lot because we're a medical device. We had to do a lot of certifications and get a lot of international certifications before we could ship a medical device outside the US. And that took quite a while. So we worked on that for about 1.5 years, and then our official launch was in November 2014 of our international strategy. When we first started, my strategic plan was really sort of the shotgun approach. I had all sorts of ideas, and I had all sorts of different experimental things I wanted to try, and I just tried everything because you don't know what's going to work in what market, and you don't know what your customers are going to be thinking, and so you just throw everything into it, and you're like, let's just try everything. So now here we are 8 years later, and it's a lot more targeted. It's a lot more scheduled. I have a calendar of events. I know which events are going to be really successful at which times of the year, which countries are going to kind of go offline, like Europe in general shuts down in August because all of the business owners leave because all the tourists come in. So I know that August is going to be not something that I need to expect my European distributors to be real active part of. And then in China, for example, a lot of people go on vacation or go back to their villages in January or February whenever the Lunar New Year happens. So I know in China, January/February time is not going to be really successful. So as you get more experience in your markets, you start to have a calendar, a strategic calendar that mirrors your different countries and what's happening throughout the year. But at the beginning, it's really important just to be experimental, try all sorts of different things, see what's going to happen. And then, as Akilah mentioned, you get lots of feedback right away from your customers, and they'll start telling you, oh, in terms of this time of year or this marketing strategy, or even colors, certain colors mean different things in different cultures. And so learning which colors are going to be more effective in different regions and different styles. We had a distributor in Israel who had very specific design criteria he wanted for his patients. And so he sent us sort of a prototype of what he wanted them to look like. We loved it so much, we actually implemented it for all of our product line that looked like that. And we still, to this day, use the majority of his designs. So yeah, if you have a plan, it's going to be really experimental at first, but you're going to start getting more targeted, and then you're going to get lots of feedback from your customers, and that will change your strategic plan.
Oh, yeah, and very good points that you mentioned with colors and numbers of things. As Akilah mentioned, the packaging, the language used, those are all very important considerations. The regulations that you mentioned, especially in a medical device company, yeah, there's a lot that you have to follow that is very country specific. Holly, can I ask you the same question? If you intentionally created an international plan or a sales strategy, and or if not, do you have one now?
I have one now, and I had one in the very beginning, and this might be the opposite of advice, but when I started and I was doing well-ish, it's grown so much but then I thought, oh, I'm doing well, I should start expanding, and I started looking into other countries. For a brief time, I was working with a sales rep. I was looking into other countries and the regulations and the trademarking, and it just kept adding up and up and up. And I was not in a place to position myself to sell at that scale. And I have a really great mentor who told me, my dog is here, who told me that you need to really see if it's going to do extremely well in the US market before you start expanding to other countries. And I stepped back, and in about 3 years, I really grew my sales in the US market. And so what I recently started doing, when I launched, my goal was to get into Barney's. I really thought that is a luxury store, and thank God that didn't happen because they went out of business. And I really have shifted my strategic plan, domestic and international, to e-commerce. And though I sell with some retailers and it does well, the majority of my sales come through my online store and Amazon. And so I started thinking recently, it's doing really well here. And then I started looking at Shopify. So that's a really great tool. You can see where people are visiting, where you get unique visitors from. And I've looked over the past couple of years, India, I get a lot of visitors from India. I would have never thought that. And so now I'm being very specific of launching in specific countries via e-commerce and Amazon. And the US Commercial Service, that's part of my planning, is working with the US Commercial Service to plan out different countries. And something else I'll just mention that I'm applying for now, it's called the California STEP Grant. If anyone's in California, that is, and I'm sure other states have it, it's a grant where you can get reimbursed for anything that has to do with exporting. So I'm going to use that for trademarks of other countries. So I'm being really strategic and just financially smart of where I'm launching and where I'm going to trademark first, because that's another thing. When you launch in other countries, you have to protect your, you have to trademark everything to protect your company.
Very good point. And thank you for mentioning the STEP grant as well. For our companies that are in the state of Washington, we have a very robust and wonderful STEP grant program. And for those of you in other states, I can direct you to the STEP grant resources in your particular states. But the STEP grant is an SBA pass-through grant that goes to state departments of commerce generally. And then in our state of Washington, we provide an export voucher for up to 75% of an expense, like registering your trademark or working on your export controls, or more ideally for us is a trade mission or a trade event like that. So again, we can certainly help you find the state grant, STEP grants, and Lisa is putting something in the chat, I see as well. Let's see, Holly, you mentioned a couple of things that I really wanted to key off of. One was having your US market set first, and by and large, almost for any company that we work with across the nation, we really want our companies to have a good sense of what their US market is before they jump into international. But we've also seen that sometimes you just jump into international, and lately in the world of e-commerce, that happens increasingly more. That can have some pitfalls, of course. We worked with a company that made a sort of a Keurig of beer brewing, and they went online and had 94 orders from across the world, and then they had to sort of put the brakes on that and go, I don't think we can sell this in Saudi Arabia, for example. And so they had to really step back. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but generally we like to see companies establish a US presence first. And then Akilah, I'm going to pivot over to you for a minute because you mentioned something that we see a lot and we like, and it's called reactive exporting or passive exporting. So you mentioned your first sale, and you're on mute, but I'm going to ask you a question. You mentioned your first sale was to Bahrain, and that it just sort of came to you. And you know, we work with companies at every stage of exporting, and for many of them, they come to us because they have had a reactive export or a passive export where somebody came to them and said, hey, your stuff is really neat, I would like to buy it. And then like you said, oh, I will sell it to you. Oh, Bahrain, how do we do that? And of course, I'm simplifying that process, but maybe you could share a little bit with us. So you had a reactive export, and do you have any sort of plan to do you have an international sales plan now, or how have you worked with that first export, and how do you think that's going to grow?
Honey, I feel like my life is just, I'm on a magic carpet. Like, this is what I do. For some people, they see chaos. For others that get it, I'm just riding the wave and using my intuition and all other kinds of positive things to kind of guide the process. And you know, I'm also part of other marketplaces, particularly wholesale marketplaces, which has really accelerated my growth. So that way I can kind of rein in some of these reactions. But again, it goes back to having the right platform, since my organization is very lean. And it's, you know, there's the stuff we do behind the scenes, like the making and the sourcing and the packaging, but there's also the online presence. I would say my online presence and the integrations with all these other marketplaces is really what's kind of helping me target focus market. But I personally kind of like how did you say this? Reactive exporting?
Reactive exporting, yeah.
Because it every time, this is gonna probably sound kind of like very young, but
Okay.
every time I get an email and they're like, hey, somebody in Germany or Denmark, you know, just placed the order. And it's not a small order. It's usually a decent sized order. It just lights me up. Like, I just start smiling, like my face. And also it gives me a chance to interact. I noticed that for some of the retailers who just take a chance with me, one of their first reactions is my speed, you know, because I don't have a lot of hangups that other people have, you know. And then also just the extra gifts I always add. And it gives me a chance to kind of like look them up first, because I know they've been checking me out. So I don't know. I don't feel like I need a plan. I think business is going quite well the way it is. And so I don't know if that is the right way to answer this. And I know there's people that have a lot more experience than me, but I'll say, you know, right now, riding on this magic carpet ride and just reacting and growing has been explosive, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
There is no wrong answer to any of these questions. Your answer is always the right one, but I just wrote down a new word that I'm going to credit you with, and you are the adventuresome exporter. And I really love that because, again, every strategy is right. It's your strategy, and it's working with you. And another thing that I'm just going to walk away from here today is just, you know, the vibe. You've talked about the vibe, and that is something that works for you and your business and the things that you're doing. So I'm very inspired by that. So thank you for sharing that. The adventuresome exporter on her magic carpet. That's my visual. Let's see, I'm going to work down some of my list of other ideas and questions that I've had here. And maybe, let's see, Holly, can you share with us any tough lessons you may have learned over the course of the growing of your international sales? And if not tough, it can be surprising things, tough or surprising. How about that?
I had a shipment that was on a vessel, and I think it was the second largest loss of cargo in history, and my product was on that ship, and
It sank?
Yeah.
Okay.
They reached out to me, the freight forwarder that I was working with, and he said a lot of the containers have gone in the ocean. We don't know if your container is one of them. And it turned out my container was one of them. And so all of my product and packaging sank to the bottom of the ocean. And it took a year to get reimbursed. And so I had to use my own money again up front to repurchase that product. And it took a long time. It was a year process for the insurance company. I think in total it was $200 million that was lost on that ship. And that was really challenging. I think that if something could go wrong, it will. I'm a pretty positive thinker, but things do go wrong, and you really have to have a plan in place for the what ifs. So I've learned that. And I would say also the not knowing, as I mentioned before, the trademarking, the rules, the regulations, the shipping costs. I've exported to certain countries, not knowing the duties that were involved in that. So I think it's really good to know upfront what the costs are going to be, what the costs of trading in that country is going to be. And so now I'm much more strategic. And then this was to follow up on the other question earlier, just so people know this, to give advice. I work with a 3PL, a shipper called ShipBob, and they have facilities in different countries. So it's really important that if you want to grow, I was with a mom and pop shipper before and they did the United States, but if you really want to grow, it's really important to work with a 3PL that has warehouses in other countries, because it makes the transition very easy when you want to start exporting. They'll help you do that. So just a side note.
No, that's certainly very helpful. And I have later on in the questioning, although this is going to be over before I know it, I do have a question about mitigating the risks of international shipments. And since you mentioned it, can I just ask a follow-on question about, did you have any types of insurance, or you work through the shipping insurance?
I don't know. There was a lawyer on here. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not. So my freight forwarder, now everything is insured. And this is why it's so important as a business owner to ask questions and to look at the invoices and to know what is being, what you're paying for. I didn't know that at that time that it was not insured. And so my freight forwarder is Chinese, living in America, and he reads the Chinese newspaper. And so he saw it before that information went public. And there was a loophole where he was able to insure my product in time. I don't know if that's legal or not. I don't know if I should be mentioning that, but luckily it was insured. So I say that because when you are exporting, make sure whoever you're working with that you have that insured, because if it's not and anything happens, you lose that money.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about this on our pricing for export. I think we are anyhow next week, but certainly the SBA and Exim Bank both offer access. Well, actually, it's just Exim Bank, isn't it? Access to insurance to insure your receivables. That's a big deal. Hey, Christy, can I sort of ask you the same question? Maybe what either a tough lesson learned, like we heard from Holly, or anything that has been surprising to you about exporting?
Yeah, we had a tough situation with our distributor in Slovakia that really taught me the importance of having the CEO of the company sign the contract and not have anybody else in the company sign the contract. So what happened for us is I was working with the woman who was taking care of their importing branch of their company, and she was the one that I was talking with the most, and she's the one that eventually ended up signing the contract to be our distributor. And unfortunately, she decided to break off from the original company and start her own company that was in direct competition with the first company. And because we had her sign the contract, again, I didn't know this at the time, Slovakian law required that we continue the contract with her under her new company, even though we had wanted to work with the first company. Luckily, the contract only lasted the rest of the year, but she ended up getting sued by the original company, and there was litigation, and we were involved in it, and it was a big, huge mess. And so at the end of that year, we severed ties with her, and we had to get back into sort of good graces with the first company. And it took kind of weeks of talking and explaining that we didn't really have a choice, that we were required to do that by law. And then we had to slowly build back trust with them because they thought we were on her side. So it was really awkward. But that was about 5 years ago, and we've had them ever since, and they're a great distributor now, and we've got a great relationship. But never sign a contract with anybody in the company other than the CEO. That was a big lesson that I learned. Some other surprising things I learned is that the cultural educational system of the country that you're working in can affect how well your sales in that country go. So, for example, in our situation, because we treat kids with autism, if a culture views autism as a psychological disorder, is basically a product of bad parenting or something like that, we won't be successful in that country because our cultural education here is that autism is a neurological disorder, something that happens to the neurons in the brain during pregnancy. And so because we have that view of autism, our products address the neurological system of the body. So a cultural perception of a certain thing might affect your sales or not. And you oftentimes don't know what that could be until you're in the country. So that's not really something you can prepare for or study or investigate. It's just a surprise. You get there and here's your product, and suddenly you realize, oh, it doesn't speak at all to your cultural context. And so you have to kind of either go about your marketing in a different way, or you have to agree that your products are not going to be successful in that country and find another country. So that was one of the big surprises that we have also discovered.
Very good. And you mentioned sort of the contractual relationship that you had with the one company, and that is something that we do run across in many countries. I know that I've worked with a couple of companies who have run into this in Egypt, where they've basically appointed a distributor for life, and it's very hard to exit out of those contracts. So having good legal resources behind you is certainly very important, and vetting those types of inquiries, which actually kind of leads me to my next question. Akilah, this one's for you, because you're the one that did receive sort of the out of the blue inquiry. And do you have a process for vetting those inquiries that you get when you get them? And your mic is off too, so I'll remind you to put that on. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like maybe this is where I'm a little spoiled. And I feel like I use I can't think of the word, the marketplaces, like for instance, Fair is one of my most popular marketplaces that I'm on. And they do a lot of the vetting of the retailers and things like that. So, and then also with the drop shipping platforms that I'm part of, they do a lot of the work for me. And that's why I say like my system, my method is a lot more lean, because I people that find me, they've already gone through all the other checks and balances, right? So that's another reason why, like, by the time someone finds me and they pick me and they're like, I want to do business, like, I don't have to deal with a lot of fuss and muss and, whining and dining per se. It's more like, no, they're serious buyers. They're super motivated. And so conversations start right away, or maybe they may have a question. So, I think, it's just, I've been blessed in that sense. So I just, hope the magic run. Yeah, just keep riding that magic carpet ride.
So Akilah, do you generally ask them to pay you in advance, or do you work out terms for your international buyers?
So believe it or not, like marketplaces like Fair, they do have a net 60. So I don't have to deal with that. They deal with the credit side. I just deal with sending high quality stuff.
Great. And that's super important that somebody is vetting, because that can be certainly a very big challenge. We don't want any of you guys to ever get scammed. So as long as those checks and balances are in place, that's what we want to hear. Holly, maybe I'll ask you the same question. If you have had international inquiries out of the blue, and how do you deal with vetting those kinds of inquiries?
Yeah, ask questions, I look at their website, and I go with my intuition. There was a company in Hong Kong that wanted to sell my product and have a very large order. And I sell with some retailers there. And we were talking on WhatsApp, and the conversation just got really weird. And the woman was really aggressive, and she wanted to have exclusive rights to sell my product. And then she kept messaging me, and I obviously did not move forward with that. So I think that even if something sounds like it could be a financial win, you always have to listen to your intuition and let that guide what you're doing. And then I will say, I did through the US Commercial Service, one of the webinars that they had recently, and it was on India, and a lot of the speakers were talking about Amazon. And one of the speakers said when you go into a country, to really focus on growing your e-commerce channel, whether that's through different platforms or Amazon, and then let distributors come to you. And so that's been my new rule. I let people come to me instead of seeking them, and then I do my due diligence and really research them. But I really believe in Amazon. I really believe if you have a product-based business that you can sell internationally. I know, as Christy said, with medical devices, with certain things, it's difficult. But with I have a beauty care, body care product, and it's all natural. It's pretty easy. There are some regulations in other countries. That's another thing you have to look into. I just really believe in starting with Amazon. You can really grow your company that way. It's difficult to get on there. It's challenging. It's complicated. But once you're on there, I believe it is the easiest way to grow your business internationally through Amazon.
Very nice. I love that both Holly and Akilah, you both talk about using your intuition, and that really speaks to me and hopefully to a number of people as well, because that really is a sort of a first litmus test, I think, is trusting. Holly, you mentioned somebody's asking for exclusives, and that's just not, that should be a red flag, for many of you. And again, we don't want anybody ever to get taken advantage of that way. Christy, I'm going to sort of ask you a similar question, and I know you're exporting on a larger scale, but maybe you can talk more about how do you vet your potential distributors or customers, and have you ever used any of the sort of insurance programs or any of, I know we have an international company profile that does a financial due diligence on companies. Maybe you can speak to a little bit about how you mitigate those risks.
Yeah, so I'm probably the total opposite of Akilah. We takes us about a year to vet a potential distributor, and I do a lot of it myself, and I also have a lot of outside services, actually that's similar to Akilah's, that are helping me with that. And so the first thing that we do is we make sure that they are a pediatric neurological development DME, durable medical equipment provider. And if they're not that, then that's kind of our first litmus test of if they're going to be a good focus on us, because we are pediatric. So then the second thing that I do is I use a lot of the services through the U.S. Commercial Service. I have them do the company background check for us. I also have XM Bank do their credit check. So a lot of companies want us to have net 30 terms where they don't have to pay us for 30 days. And so XM Bank is our bank that insures them. And so they do the background check and they provide a nice report for their credit for me, which is great. If they pass that, then the next step we do is that we have to do an extensive training process, because again, we are a medical device. And so we have to make sure that they're going to be identifying and applying the product on the correct patients. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. And so we do a seminar where we train their clinicians to make sure that they're using it effectively. There's a lot of trial and error. We'll send them samples and they'll put the items on their kids and make sure that they're doing it right. And we'll have Zoom sessions where I can show them how to put it on. And there's all sorts of really a training process before they're ever a distributor. So that can take up to a year. If they're outside the EU, then there's additional certifications that I have to go through for them. And so sometimes those can take, like in Brazil, it took us 5 years to get the certification to sell our product in Brazil, because the certification process kept changing. And so we would get it completed and then it would change and I'd have to redo it. So some countries, again, we're a medical device, so it might be different for you, but the process of onboarding a distributor for us is really long and lengthy, and we have a lot of outside support that helps us do that. One of the things I have advice for people, if you are in a business like agriculture, like food or medical devices or anything that takes high certification levels, you'll want to have somebody on your team in-house that is just devoted to doing that. Right now, it's about 1/3 of my time. When we first started, it was a tiny bit of my time, but now it's about 1/3 of my time. So about 2.5 days a week, I'm working just on certifications, and certifications can change. And so about every 2 to 3 years, I have to redo something in one of our certifications. So you want to make sure that you have on your team of people somebody that's just focused on that, so that you don't get surprised and suddenly the customs office is telling you can't import this because the certification has changed and you didn't change to meet that. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely, and sort of you segued me into what really I think is going to have to be sort of the last series of questions for all three of you. I'm going to ask you this. You mentioned providing some advice, so maybe all three of you can share what advice you might have for women-owned businesses who would like to grow their companies, to grow and thrive, and to do that domestically and internationally. And if you have any advice for anybody that you can share, or if you can share advice on how to get started. And Akilah, why don't I start that question with you?
Thank you. I think for me, realizing that my tribe, the people who really get the vibe, who want to take that magic carpet ride, they may not necessarily be in my local region. And I started my business right before the pandemic hit. So the amount of pivoting and changes and just rolling with the punches that I was dealt with a lot of challenges very quick, that you drop $10,000 in to get started with your business. And then they're like, well, guess what? The world shut down. Now what do you do? And that's kind of been the mode of operation ever since. So I think that trust yourself, believe in your intuition, and find your tribe. It may not be in your local area. It may be on the other side of the mountain, the ocean, who knows? But there's people that want what you're offering, whether it's services or products. And, you just gotta put on your big girl pants, get on that magic carpet ride and just ride the wind. So
yeah, starting a business right before the pandemic, I think you probably have some very unique stories and challenges to share. And that's actually super inspiring, I think, for everybody who's on our program today. And kudos to you for rolling with that at a very challenging time when, we couldn't even figure out how to make our technology work for the workplace. There you were launching a company. So hats off to you. Let's see, Holly, why don't you share with us sort of the same, if you have some advice on companies to grow their business domestically, grow their business internationally, and how people might get started with that?
I have a lot of thoughts. The first thing is, don't undermine market research. You want to do a lot of research on the product that you're launching or products that you want to launch. You might think it's a great idea and the market might not think that. I launched at the Malibu Farmers Market. I, at the time, was selling my deodorant products for $35, which is astronomical for a lot of people that buy deodorant. I've now raised it to $42, and people thought I was crazy to think I could sell a deodorant at that price point. And I thought, I'm going to test it where the rich ladies are, and it did really well. And after that, I launched on my website, and it's just grown a lot. And so a couple of thoughts. So start local and think global. That's how I have addressed my brand. Go to farmers markets, find those type of trade shows that are inexpensive to get into, because you're selling one and then you're getting feedback in person now that things are opening up. And then a couple other things. Someone once said this and it really resonated with me, that when you have something, a product, 10% of people will just hate it. 10% of people are going to love it, and 80% will be indifferent. And so if you find that 10% of people that are really obsessed with your brand and are really loyal, really focus on that and just kind of wash out the other people. If people, I have a lot of ads and the majority are really positive comments, others are negative, I always respond with kindness and love, but I don't try to sell that when somebody writes something negative. I just write something nice. And then, and build your community. So if you want to grow an international brand, you know, local, global, just really be loyal to the people who are dedicated to your brand and purchasing from you. And whether that's emails or cards, whatever it is, responding on ads, just be really kind to the people who are supporting your brand, because it would not be there without those people.
Excellent advice. I love that breakdown in percentages too. That's really actually very interesting. I think it speaks to also what Akilah just said. And there are people who want to buy your stuff, and that's interesting. There are people that's just going to hate your stuff. That's also, you know, probably true. Christy, can I ask you to share the same answer to the same question?
Yeah, just definitely ditto everything Akilah and Holly has said. Really good advice. And I would also say, just as women, you know, we need to be bold and we need to be experimental and we need to not be afraid. Like Akilah touched on that a lot during this webinar, and it's so important because we can, you know, really be our worst enemy sometimes, but just, you gotta just push through and just do it and take risks. I think that's the biggest thing. Don't be afraid to have a bad distributor. Sometimes I was nervous that if I went with the wrong distributor, my whole business was going to blow up. And you'll survive bad distributors. It's better to try, and the majority of them are going to be great. And then you'll learn from the ones that aren't. And also, this was touched on earlier, but get your trademarks ahead of time. Holly mentioned that. It's so important to do that. We lost our trademark in Europe. And so another company had found out a month before we launched that we were going to be launching in Europe, and they went in and got our trademark so that we couldn't use our name brand in Europe. So it was very intentional. So don't be afraid to get a trademark before you launch. And now we have a different name in Europe, and it's very confusing for our customers to know who to go to, because they're following the name and it's a different name. So trademarks, super important. And then just get as many resources and help from we've got so many people in this region that help us, the SBDC, Afaqua, which Zara's here, and she's great to work with that. The U.S. Commercial Service, there's so many resources, there's so many grants, there's so many free things, there's webinars. I read tons of books. There's a Jim Foley book about global entrepreneur. You should read that. It's the first thing I did. And just take webinars, take classes. You should constantly be learn about finance, learn about economics. It's not something that you learn in school unless you're in business school typically. And so sometimes it's retroactive for those of us that are here. So yeah, never stop learning and be bold.
Thank you for that. And Christy, you sort of did my job for me. I really should have asked what government programs any of you guys have used, because I do represent a U.S. government agency. So thank you for that, and for our also for the shout out to Zara Castillo at the Export Finance Assistance Center of Washington. And again, we will remind everybody there's really no wrong door. I know we've had a lot of questions in the chat, and I know that Lisa has been trying to respond to them, and I apologize if we're not going to get to all of these. I know there was a very fun one about using, I think, Google Translate, and if anybody has had a interesting experience with that, or having any sort of fun translation or not fun translation issues. I don't know if any of our three panelists have come across that, but I thought that was kind of a fun question. Anybody? I'm guessing not.
I'll just say that if I have to translate something for another country, I find somebody who's fluent in that language as a friend, because Google Translator, the translator, it's not always accurate. So I think it's good to start with that and then actually find someone who speaks the language fluently to run it by them.
Yeah, good advice for sure. I think that finding a native language speaker is probably the way to go in many of these cases, so we avoid unfortunate Google Translate issues. I do think that we are running out of time here today. We've asked you to join us for an hour, and I know your time is valuable. I also know my dog is barking outside the door, so she's telling me it must be time to wrap up. I want to, I want to really thank everybody for our participation today. Our 3 amazing women panelists, all of our amazing attendees. I want to note that Lisa White has noted the questions as well from the chat, but because we went a little long on our 30 minutes here, I apologize for that. For those of you asking for very specific information, we will loop back with you, and she has saved that chat. I want to invite you all to participate in our next events that will come up every Wednesday through the remainder of March. So we've enjoyed Why Export today. We're going to move on how to price and other business considerations next week. The week after, we'll have our digital marketing strategy. And last, we're going to close with Find International Customers. You are all welcome to attend all of those. And you're also welcome to reach out to me, Lisa, Susan, any of our panelists. Again, there is no wrong door for asking your questions if we didn't get those answered today. And again, my thanks to everybody for attending and for hosting our event today. And with that, I think I will close off and hope that you're all inspired to grow and thrive. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, everybody, for being here this morning. We look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Yay, thank you.